Most guys, even before you go out, right, you clean up a little bit.
Hi, I'm Andy.
And I'm Roger.
And welcome to The Middle,
where we try to have thoughtful conversations
about awkward topics
on our search to find the middle.
That's fatphobic.
I don't feel war. I just own halfway to Siwa.
A few moments ago, Buckingham Palace announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
I act as if God exists.
Put your masks on.
How dare you! You have stolen my dreams, my childhood, with your empty words.
Hi listeners, a heads up about today's episode.
Today we unzip some very adult themes, but we promise this is a cracker of an episode, so please listen on if you're good to go.
I agree, Roger. Let's dive right in then.
Hello, Andy. I want to say a big middle podcast welcome to our guest today, Gerome. So how you doing, Gerome?
Well, mate, and thanks for having me, guys. Thanks, Andy. Thank you all.
So, Gerome, usually when we have a guest on, before you introduce yourself, I usually tell a self-debasing story to just kind of loosen everyone up. And so I'll kind of keep to that tradition today. And this story takes place in my office, which is, as Andy would know, I work from home primarily. So in my mother's bedroom at the moment.
Hang on, I'm not sure I want to hear this story.
Well, see, this is the thing, right? So I've just recently moved out of a place back with our parents right now, which is a crazy situation of a man my age that has quite a large family. But we're back with my mum and dad who have their family house while we look for our next place. So I'm working out of my mum's bedroom. It's the first time I've had to use a virtual background for work. And I noticed the other day, like on a call, some of my colleagues kind of like smiling at me. And I like looked up and I have this really long cylindrical water bottle. And I was kind of like, I take it straight from the bottle, right? Because I don't like the fact that the glass is there. And what the camera was doing was blanking out this massive picture of like a dong like into my mouth. And it was making it transparent so that it would kind of look like I was drinking from the bottle. And it had like the rounded tip and everything. It wasn't good. And I was like, oh man, like what's going on? Like why are people laughing? And then I saw myself and it had the tip like right into my mouth. And yeah, all of a sudden I was just like in a Japanese porno, you know, when they blur out the private bits. So I was wondering whether anyone had that experience before.
I don't use those backgrounds, man. I'm authentic.
Yeah. So you're one of these people who actually go to the office, is that right?
Pretty much, or you can just see what I've got. I'm not going to fake it.
So Gerome, people see your water bottle in real life then, rather than a virtual?
They actually do, and there's not one here right now. There are a few actually, if you can see up the top there. And there's a few other suspect-looking things up there, but they're not what you think they are.
Quite a collection. You got.
I can prove it.
Very diverse there. You've got some white ones and some black ones.
Somewhat phallic in nature.
They are very phallic, aren't they? Looking back now.
So on that note, Roger, Gerome, I think we should probably kick off today's proceedings. So today we're in the tradition of some of our earlier episodes where we've taken advantage of a guest to understand more about the lives and experiences of people other than ourselves. We thought we would explore the topic of what it's like to be a gay person or someone who isn't heterosexual in modern Australia. And so we thought we would get someone who could speak to those experiences. So Gerome, maybe if you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background and then we can get right into it.
Yeah, sure, man. So I'm, I guess I'm of the LGBTQ plus Q, look, whatever, bro. I forgot already how many letters there are now. And look, I don't think that matters, but not to me anyway. And I have to say that anything I say today, I guess, is of my own personal opinion and experience. So I hope I don't offend anyone. But look, I am of that persuasion. And yeah, look, I've been of that way for some time now. So I guess I've got a bit of experience in that space. Happy to share my thoughts on a few things.
Thanks, Gerome. In the middle, and I think even in growing up, I suppose, always been interested in other perspectives, like Andy said. So I think it's really, an amazing chance to kind of have that. And I do think whenever you have a chat about LGBT issues, especially from a heterosexual point of view, it's always quite a curious dynamic that plays out where often as you are curious about elements and you're exploring them, you're often wondering whether it's okay to do so. and I think that that's a common dynamic that plays out for this kind of thing. We've caught a real life one. We left out some counterfeit Kylie Minogue tickets and we trapped you in the glass cage. And now we're gonna treat you like a carnival experiment. And I think that's sometimes is the problem. Like, I think people sometimes confuse this idea of like fascination as not acceptance. And I think that definitely isn't the case for me personally. I think that it's totally, fine to be fascinated and curious, but also respectful and accepting as well. And that's what I'm hoping we can have the tone of our conversation today. But let's see how we go.
Agreed, man. Yeah.
So I guess I'll kick it off, and I think that it's a fair point because I know growing up where Andy and I grew up, and especially in school, there was no kind of gay or lesbian people, I would say, out. It wasn't really a thing, and that's pretty remarkable because it wouldn't really be that way now. So we went through a fair part of your life without really coming into contact with those views in an open manner, which looking back is a real a shame, but also a sign of the times and how we've progressed. Did you want to have a little bit of a go of telling us kind of your story and how you kind of process those feelings that you didn't fall into the hetero kind of culture?
Yeah, sure. So thinking back, I'm getting on right now. So it was some time ago. I reckon it would have been about 30 years ago when I first started to feel that something wasn't quite the same as everybody else. But at that time, I wasn't really sure what that meant. And I grew up in the country as well. At that point in time, when you're growing up, you're kids, you don't need to worry about that kind of stuff. But it was very clear looking back that some people were very clearly they were different to everybody else. And I'm not sure if I felt comfortable to be that way at the time. So I kind of did something else that I needed to do to get through. And yeah.
So and I think that's a really common experience, isn't it, of having to adapt to the environment and it's this thing about fitting in, I suppose, that everyone goes through, but is even more extreme for members of the LGBT community.
Yeah, definitely. When I reflect back now, I feel like if I was growing up now, that would not have happened. It would have been very, very different to what I had to experience, unfortunately.
How salient was it for you? Were you 100% sure
I was not. No, I was not at that time. And yeah, to be completely open and honest, I played both ways. And yeah, I'm not sure that worked out well for a few people. But that's what happens when society says you should be doing one thing and you're not sure with that, you need to do something else. But that being said, I feel like everyone's on a spectrum. You're not either one or the other. It's just that you'd prefer to do something different.
Yeah, that's something that I must admit that I have struggled with, comprehending the spectrum aspect of it all. Because I think that we're all victims of our own societal norms, right? And the environments that we grew up in, that we're socialized in. How would you kind of, Gerome, describe this idea of like the spectrum? Either it doesn't have to be directly from you as well, but if you were trying to say, describe it to someone who just couldn't wrap their head around it, is it this kind of complex thing that involves splitting romantic feelings versus physical attraction, or is it both? Is it like, how would you
totally both, man. So, and I'm not sure this has really changed, but you're either gay or you're heterosexual. And if you're neither one of those, then you're kind of an outcast, I feel, at the moment. And if you want to check on Twitter, you'll find heaps of people that aren't in either of those categories. But, I feel like if you could not go out and describe yourself as being bisexual at the moment and be comfortable about it, I don't feel that you can anyway.
Do you think it's because you're seen by either community, like so either the heterosexual or gay community, as you're just making this shit up, right? You're actually
you're playing it both ways. You're not serious. You don't want either one, and it's either this or that, like on or off, and I feel like that's how it's working at the moment. But this is starting to change. So the younger generations that are coming through now are a little bit more fluid compared to what I've experienced.
But I guess in terms of, the notion of a spectrum, and I mean, even what you just said around the gay community kind of ragging on you if you're bi, and then the heterosexual community sort of like, come on, how can you be like, I mean, in some ways, isn't that part of the challenge, right? Because like Roger, you mentioned like you struggle to get your head around it, but like every cultural force that you faced growing up reaffirmed, let's say you're 80% hetero and 20% gay, right? Let's just I'm not sure if that's...
As long as it's the bottom half, we're all good.
Let's get the calculator out. But like every part of like culture is like reinforcing the 80%, which then just like, okay, that 20%, we'll just keep that in the box somewhere and pretend it doesn't exist, right? Whereas if you're, let's say it's the other way around, right? You're 20% hetero, 80% gay, then it's actually the whole of society and culture and all that trying to amplify that 20% thing such that the 80% is actually really what should be dominating, but it, you know, the power of culture and society actually is, you know, so it's hard to understand it.
Exactly, Andy. And that's why I mentioned that, like, we're all victims of, we're all prisoners in terms of the way we've been socialized, right? It's like catching your brother looking at gay porn, right? You kind of think to yourself, he's gay. Like, there's no way that he's not kind of gay, right? If you're what you thought was a straight man looking at gay porn. Now, you shouldn't really think that, right? Because it could be all the things that we're speaking about, experimentation, it could be on a spectrum, all this kind of stuff. But in your mind, it's such a threat to kind of identity and this idea that you would choose to look at gay porn. And it kind of think it challenges your identity of what masculinity is, right? And I actually want to move there next around. What do heterosexual people not really understand about gay culture? And I think I want to start with this idea of the trope, right? That gay men have idiosyncrasies, they're camp, they're effeminate, you know, so all these kind of things that go with the cliche and this idea of what's masculine versus what's feminine, how does that play into gay culture?
Yeah, that's a good one because I never got that. Like, I don't understand it. I've got many, many, many friends who you would describe as camp and effeminate, but I never got it. And I feel like it's kind of a protection mechanism where they want to identify someone different to heterosexual men. I feel like that could be it.
Do you think it's a signaling thing, Gerome? Like, I'm reading like this idea of, you know, throughout history, you kind of had quite a high risk situation to know whether if someone...
There are other signals. You know? There are other signals.
Sorry to interrupt the episode. If you're enjoying our content, make sure to hit subscribe on your preferred podcast app so you never miss an episode.
Let your friends know about us. Your support means a lot and word of mouth really helps.
A great way to share with your friends is to comment, engage, like and share some of our social media posts. We're on all major platforms and you can find our links in our show notes or our website, www.the.middle.site.
And guess what? We've got even more for you. We're building a subscriber email list so we can give access to content that you can't get any other way. Check our show notes to find out how to get added to our subscriber list, or visit our website at www.the.middle.site.
Thank you, and we'll return you now to the episode.
Not to get off this tangent, but I'm actually really interested in that, right? So, okay, so like I live in the inner city of Sydney, and in probably a part of Sydney that has, like, according to the census, the highest proportion of people who would identify as not heterosexual, put it that way, and everything other than heterosexual. If you were in a bar in my area, with what confidence would you have in knowing, yep, straight, gay? Is it just abundantly clear? Or
I'd be pretty confident. I reckon you get a look, mate, and if you get the look, go into the bathroom and see what happens. Yeah.
Oh, yes. But I remember in previous conversations, Gerome, you said that gaydar wasn't a real thing, though.
So,
or is it just a thing like white chicks say that they have a good gaydar, but really they have no idea?
Yeah, there's a look. And when I talk about the look, it's not the look of the person, it's the eye contact that you get.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a situation where you've been fairly confident that someone, whether you got the look or there was some other signals or vibes, and it turned out not to be the case?
Yeah, no, man. I mean, you kind of, it's the same thing with a straight couple, or it's, if you walk up to a girl and you get the wrong kind of vibe, then you turn away, right? You don't keep pushing. But with gay guys, I think it's a little bit easier in that you get the look and it's on. There's not a lot of mucking around there.
You mentioned this not understanding the effeminate culture versus the masculine, just you are who you are. Do you see, is there any truth to this idea that there is pairing and balance in coupling and relationships? So there is still a kind of masculine and feminine role that's played in a couple?
No, I don't think that happens. I look, it might happen for a few, but again, in my experience, it's completely mixed up, man. Like, other people, they're happy to mix it up a bit. You can't say that there's always the effeminate one, always the masculine one. You'd see that in porn, though, definitely. definitely.
Yeah.
Just not real life.
I'll ask my brother's friend. I have to take his word for it.
So, Gerome, just in terms of like, you know, that really camp kind of flamboyant culture, and, you know, so you mentioned that you don't think it's really signaling because it's not really actually necessary. I guess I would perceive it to be somewhat of a like fuck you to, you know, almost everyone who caused problems for someone growing up because of the way they were almost.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like a rejection of,
Oh,
you know,
totally. Andy, great point. Like, look at Mardi Gras. That's why it exists, right? Like in my mind, that was a protest, and that was a protest about being persecuted and fucking arrested for doing what heterosexuals believed was the wrong thing, and that's how it all came about. But times have changed, and I agree that we can't forget it. But I mean, for me now, that parade has become completely irrelevant.
Do you think that as someone, so like there's a couple of people that I either know personally or certainly know of who have expressed this sort of view of like, where's the place for me as a gay person who doesn't want to like hop on inflatable cocks down Oxford Street? I just want to be just like a normal person, and I don't want to buy into that whole culture. That's not part of who I am, and actually, even though they themselves, you know, do identify as part of the community, they actively reject it. Is there a divide?
I think there is, mate. And if people are struggling, that they turn to the apps, right? The internet and the apps have helped these people so much, because you've got Grindr, you've got Feld, you've got there's a whole raft of these apps, and they help people connect that would otherwise not be able to understand how they fit into the community. You don't need Mardi Gras anymore to do that. And, you know, some people aren't comfortable screaming up Oxford Street dressed in rainbows, and these apps are definitely helping them to do it in another way that might be a bit more comfortable for them. So I think that's helping.
I mean, I must admit, especially in a boring corporate environment, it becomes a bit of a pastime to kind of test the old gaydar sometimes. And I think that there's been a few times where, I guess what you would say as camp or feminine idiosyncrasies have resulted in a few misfires, right? They're usually young people that people go, oh, he must be gay. He's got the twang, he's got the campness, or maybe they have families or whatever kind of thing in a heterosexual environment. And so it is kind of an interesting take, and I think it's changing even more with younger people, that they don't feel the same tug of masculinity that perhaps we did growing up. This idea of like having to be manly, they kind of almost double down into it and say, well, I can be whatever I want. Like, I don't really care.
Let's face it though, like the biggest signal in the office of whether someone's gay or not is if someone's in their 30s, 40s, 50s, older, not young, but, you know, 30s and above, is whether they've got a good body and they're really sharply dressed.
Be careful, Andy.
Like, surely that...
Dude.
Be careful. Far out.
Is that why you've actively not worked on your body for a while?
Well, it's true. I mean, like...
All right. I wouldn't mind switching now to a little bit about relationships and differences, right? Because I think this is also a topic that has a lot of questions, a lot of misconceptions and things like that. And I'll kind of just throw one out there, Gerome, maybe we can discuss it with the caveats that, you know, I don't take this stance, but it's just something that, you know, you do hear kind of every now and then. And this is probably more from a man's point of view. And this is this idea of differences between heterosexual couples and relationships. Imagine if there were two men involved. Like, wouldn't this result in like an kind of restrained kind of like anything goes attitude? And then how does that translate to like a couple?
Yeah, look, it does. And I feel like the vast majority of couples that I am friends with have what is called an open relationship, because sometimes the feelings between each other, they're very strong, right? But you need something else. And what happens is you find out that quick need elsewhere. And I don't feel like that's okay in a heterosexual relationship, although, again, I'm learning quickly that in some relationships it is okay. It's becoming a thing now. But yeah, certainly with the gay relationship, it's just the way it is.
What prevalence of relationships would you, if you had to guess, would be
I'd give
monogamous?
it 70%. I'd give it 70% open, 30 monogamous based on the people that I know.
What about
yeah.
let's say in a gay marriage situation?
I can't answer that question. I don't know. The gay marriages I do know are open relationships.
Yeah. There's definitely a big difference there, right? There's not an imagined kind of slight of heterosexual judgment that actually this idea of being open. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll kind of, I'll share my own perspective on this because actually, I'll caveat this with I'm someone who loves, experiencing subcultures and different experiences and things like that. One drunken night, I agreed to go with a friend into a sauna, and I'd never been in a sauna before. So of course, it's a gay sauna, and I kind of went into this world not knowing anything about it, and it was very, very confronting, right? As someone who prides himself on being accepting and being open to things like that, it was just another world that I had not wrapped my head around and had not really processed, because in the heterosexual world, like you said, it's very monogamous. People are very possessive, very judgmental, and affection, especially both mental and physical affection, is tied down really tightly, right? In a very codependent way. And so what I observed at the sauna was a real departure from that, and this idea of kind of what maybe you're saying and things that the act of kind of, hooking up with someone or whatever doesn't necessarily have to impact other relationships and other things around it. And that's what I was seeing en masse at this sauna, right? There was just a free flow that kind of almost reminded me of somewhere between the hippie culture of free love and Rocky Horror Picture Show, Sexual Dystopian. And yeah, it was just something so foreign because I'm there would never be this for straight people. There's just this sauna you could come and just pay an entrance fee, and then it's just a smorgasbord of whatever you want to do.
It is a transaction, Roger. It's a transaction. You have a need, you need to get it sorted. You pay the money and you do it, you go. Yeah, look, there are quite a few of those throughout the city, and yeah, they work for people.
Yeah. It was very eye-opening. When I say eye-opening, I couldn't close my eyes, literally. And just to give people a bit of a flavor, if you want to live vicariously through this trip to Wonderland, this was going down dark corridors and people hooking up, and a guy getting blown in the corner, other people kissing, 4 people wrestling naked in another room, and then just a bunch of other guys. There was a guy reading the Financial Times, having a coffee in the waiting room, and then next door to him there's strobe lights going off and someone getting it on, right? It was crazy. And I was this is simultaneously beautiful and horrifying because it challenges everything that what I understand the world's about, right? And then the poor little, what really translates is this poor little Indian guy had to come in halfway through with the fucking spray and wipe and was cleaning the walls in the background while everyone was having stuff. And, I'm what a job.
Not to transplant Roger's experiences to your own, but I think on average it's probably fair to say that women are a lot more, well, I'll use the word choosy just because of, but whatever the right word is there, right? They're a lot more discerning because they're trying to, I guess in an evolutionary sense, they're trying to choose a partner that's going to...
Agreed.
So in this sort of a setting, how wide is the spectrum of fat little butch guy versus really buff, kind of goes to the gym.
What are you asking?
So I guess what I'm trying to get at is that,
it depends how late the night is, really, bro. It's we get to the end of the night,
how mist-filled the sauna is at that time. We've got to wait till the mist builds up first and then come back and have another try.
Yeah.
Well, I would say though, Andy, again, not to, Gerome, feel free to kind of back me up or not here. But one of the things that I was really, really surprised about the sauna in terms of its clientele, and I think there is a mirror to this at just normal kind of LGBT-friendly bars and nightclubs, is the spectrum of men is way, way more than what you would find at just a normal heterosexual bar or whatever. So there was really quite old men, there were really young men, and everything in between, right? It's kind of weird. It was very challenging, for example, to see someone there that perhaps could be my dad, literally looked like my dad or something like that. But you're at the same establishment, you're both having a good time, drinking, whatever it might be, right? So I think the ends of the spectrum was really, really diverse and really, really far apart.
So, Roger, just to be clear, we weren't talking about a heterosexual sauna here.
That's
because there aren't many.
Well, even when I to that point, actually, I have a friend, and I know he's a listener, so shout out. That we love to kind of try different saunas, right? And heterosexual saunas. And like you said, there aren't actually that many heterosexual saunas. So
No.
there's been a few false positives, let's put it that way, when we're gone in, and a few ones attached to gyms and stuff like that we thought were safe.
Yeah.
And then, we got it very wrong. But there's something about it, I guess. It's a certain environment that is conducive to that, I suppose. It's very discreet and it's already innately physical because, you're naked and stuff like that.
Yep.
Yeah. I love a good sauna. Yeah.
Indeed. I don't know if you want to talk more about gay saunas, but I expect you'd find a very different experience if you went to one of those. They're not the same as a heterosexual one.
Can I ask, Gerome, what's your craziest story or the wildest thing you've seen in one of these establishments?
I'd have to say Los Angeles would have had to be one of the worst in terms of cleanliness.
Oh,
so
man.
if you can't walk, of course you have to take your shoes off. But if there is so much stuff on the floor that you can't walk without slipping, then that's a problem.
Pressure hose.
Yeah. I think to just focus on an element, right? So I think that some people would see that as a lifestyle and kind of almost bring morality into it. And I think that's the part where this becomes really tricky, because all a heterosexual person maybe that has old school values can see is that being a destructive behavior.
Bad.
Because they base their life on really hetero and monogamous terms, right? And not see the downside of that, because everything is a trade-off in life. There's plenty of monogamous couples that are very deeply unhappy for some of the reasons that you mentioned, right? They're not getting their needs met.
Yeah, things have changed over time. So do you guys remember the Grim Reaper ads?
Gerome, do you want to just explain the Grim Reaper campaign just so that people who are not familiar with it?
Yeah, so was it 1984 when that came? I think it was 1984. I was a young child at the time, or 84, 86, I think, was when the Grim Reaper ads came out, and that was because of the AIDS at that time. It was called the AIDS virus. It's the HIV virus, of course, we know now, and people were dying from that at the time. It became a gay disease. I mean, it wasn't, but I think the gay community were targeted because they were the ones that were impacted the most at the time by it. And a lot of people died, but that was a long time ago. And a lot of older people still think about that. It's not really an issue for anyone anymore. We've got the medication that we need. We've got the prevention that we need put in place. So long as people use what we have, we're all fine. And that is why I think there's a bit of a proliferation at the moment of saunas and stuff going on.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good segue into this, into our kind of next area, which is really this idea around acceptance and the evolution of how the world, and especially the LGBT community, has dealt with HIV, right? And there's been all these advances. And I think something that is probably common knowledge that HIV is no longer a death sentence, as they say, due to antivirals and advances there. But probably lesser known is the emergence of PrEP. And do you want to kind of speak to that a little bit, Gerome, and kind of bring people up to speed?
Yeah, totally. So it is very similar to, but not as hectic as the drugs you would take if you had HIV, but it pretty much completely prevents you from contracting HIV in the first place. So long as you're good with the dosage, I think it's a pill a day. It's not that hard, and for a gay person. And it's actually funny because I feel like gay people are actually a little bit more in tune with their health and not contracting diseases because of what has happened in the past. Whereas heterosexual people, I think they might be a bit more complacent about what could happen if they didn't take these drugs. The gay people, the gays, have taken this on, and not only just for HIV, but for other things as well. So using condoms, making sure that you practice safe sex has been a big thing for a very long time. And that has cut down, it's proven to cut down the transfer of any disease.
Yeah. Is there any stigma about being on PrEP? Or is it just so widespread that it's nothing? I
think the only stigma is that if you talk to people about being on PrEP, you're known as a bit of a slut. But again, I don't think that's really that much of an issue for gay people in that social scene.
I didn't think I'd have a personal anecdote about PrEP, but I was in the GP clinic the other day and I saw a sign, a poster. It was like one of those like Australian government sort of sponsored type things. And it was pitched around and, probably no surprises in the area that I live. But it was pitched around, are you going overseas in the next couple of months? Make sure you ask your doctor about this. That was the prompt, right? Of almost like get your tetanus, get up to date on your tetanus shot, and prep at the same time.
Monkeypox was another thing, a gay disease that, as per Kyle Sandilands, the gay disease, we just all got vaccinated. Just fucking do it. And I feel like we're a bit more on top of our health than a lot of other people, to be honest, because of that and what we've experienced in the past.
Yeah, I think so. I think that kind of wellness culture, and that extends to wellness culture too, I think in the gay community, right? Like, I mean, some of it's obviously for vanity, but I think it kind of translates to just being very conscious about your health in general, right?
Definitely.
So, Gerome, interested now to turn to the topic of gay prostitution and about, some of the challenges and the issues involved.
Oh, yeah. So this is something that's close to my heart. I didn't realise. So I grew up in the country. I moved to the city when I was very young. I had a job with the bank, and there were all these people that I'd met that were close friends. And at the time, I just didn't know what was going on. They didn't have jobs, did they? And I recently come out. Everything was new to me, the whole gay scene. A very different time. But a lot of people, they're kind of estranged from their families. If they don't have a job, they end up having to engage in prostitution. And yeah, look, I think it's a gay thing. I'm not sure if it's happening right now, although looking at OnlyFans, and I feel like it's moved on. It's moved on from what it used to be about meeting up with people, and now it's just on the internet. If you're gay, you kind of have to get an income because you can't get it, or you feel like you can't get it anywhere else, and that's what people do.
So what's the balance of it being seen as like an opportunity, or like becoming exposed to potentially some of the financial upside of doing it versus the being compelled to do it? So like one of the anecdotes that I read in a book was that if you were a young gay person growing up in, let's say, 1930s Italy or somewhere, at that time of that era, right? You have two ways to gain respect in your community. One is to be a family man and, get married and, be the pillar of strength in your community, or become a priest. And so, if you were gay, you ruled out the first option and you went for the second. So how much of it is sort of placing and opting into an opportunity that becomes available in that this market exists, I guess?
Yeah, well, there's already one option taken off the table, isn't there? So for someone that they're attracted to men, they're not going to have a family. And again, that kind of cuts them out of getting some opportunities that they otherwise would have. So where do they go? They go to the gay bars, and the gay bars have older men who have the potential to look after them. And I think that's what happens.
There must be a part too that is just, gay men are still men, right? And they probably have less shame around this kind of stuff as well, right? That I think that because of societal norms as well, that maybe it's not as taboo in that way, right? And that they can see it as,
I'd agree with that as well. Yeah, for someone that's young that's coming out, I'm just not so sure. Yeah, I think it's a bit of an issue. I think it's one of those things that kind of goes under the radar, kind of moves into that whole gay suicide thing also as well. That is another issue that,
Wow. I think that for me, the blurred line here is probably, and this is something that probably cuts divides from sexual orientation, is this idea of power imbalance and being attached to some kind of sugar daddy or sugar mama or whatever it is, right? Like, I think that blurred line of transacting sexual favors for, finances, right? Like, is that prostitution? And some would say yes, some would say no, but it's probably clear.
Where do you draw the line?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, is it a dinner? Is it a drink? Or is it, let's go home and have fun for, I don't know, $300 or whatever?
Yeah, or, or being someone that you have a relationship with an older man and he pays you rent, he puts you up somewhere and all this kind of stuff, gives you all the drugs you want or whatever it may be.
Yeah, you find that on Twitter. OnlyFans.
But I guess my kind of challenge to the situation is that if you reverse the sexes into a heterosexual, like a woman having a sugar daddy, puts her up, pays for her rent, takes her out to dinner, whatever, but it's obviously implied that sugar daddy's getting sex whenever he wants, they wouldn't really classify that as prostitution, even though everyone involved is probably getting exploited to some degree.
True. Yeah. It would be interesting to understand the prevalence in each situation, like gay or straight. I don't know.
Yeah. Just adjacent to this, though, Gerome, I probably have a question, a curiosity more about the tales of old school kind of cruising and scene joints, like public bathrooms at certain parks. And is that like a bygone era that is about secrecy, or is it actually still in operation and like a kink thing? It's like there are people that are just into that and it's a part of the culture or not?
It still exists. It totally exists. Any bathroom, any public bathroom. Yeah.
So there's certain like parks and things like that?
Yeah, there are. So you would have heard about Centennial Park, I suspect, in Sydney. There's, I forget what the park is, the Domain. There are various bathrooms and they're all over the place. So you get that look that I talked about before. So Andy, Roger, have you heard about beats before? Do you know what a beat is?
Well, I thought it was like a scene, like a cruising thing. Is that, or is that too general?
So it could be anywhere. It could be a park. It could be a toilet. It could be somewhere where gay guys know that they can go, and there'll be other gay guys there. It's in public, of course, and they would meet each other for the purpose of some kind of sexual relation.
So even with like apps and stuff out there, there's still people who like to do it old school. This is just how they roll.
Yeah, and generally they're the people that are married.
Yes, like closeted. Isn't that the most dangerous ones though?
There are. So you're talking about, and this has been in the press quite a bit, Marks Park on Bondi Beach. I don't think that's a beat anymore for obvious reasons, but a few guys were thrown off there because it was a target. But you've also got the nude beaches that become some kind of a beat as well. So Obelisk, but yeah, there's a few other nude beaches around.
Andy and I will make sure we put all these locations in the show notes so that you don't have to listen back to this.
I actually have a question. So when I think of toilet blocks and the like, I like probably the most famous example I can think of is Alan Jones being arrested in London, I think, which made me. So I have two questions related to that. So he was arrested. So my first question is the legal status of like when this sort of happened. So I'm not sure if he was arrested for public indecency or because at the time the laws were prejudiced against homosexuals. But I guess the other thing that I find interesting with a figure like Alan Jones is that, I mean, I don't think anyone's of any doubt as to his sexual orientation, but as far as I'm aware, he has not come out publicly. So I guess the second part then related to him specifically, is that a thing? Like, is there this generation of maybe probably more older gay gentlemen who the gay community knows that they're gay, but yeah, still haven't come out and still maybe don't have wives, or it's this unspoken thing?
It's too late for them, Andy. They should be let go for whatever they've done because they've been oppressed for so long. They've missed out on most of their lives, to be honest, half of their life at least. They probably weren't interested in a heterosexual relationship, and if they had to do so, they've fucking struggled to get through it. Let them go.
Do you think they have missed out though, or they're just kind of like it's a don't ask, don't tell situation where on the weekends they're just hidden up their own business?
I don't think anyone has it in them to do that. Seriously, I don't. Yeah,
like on the legal side, because I've been listening to a bit of history lately. In the UK, they had the famous English Buggery Act, and that was put in by King Henry VIII, and when he did all the splitting of the church and all that kind of stuff, right? Which obviously made it a crime to have anal sex between men, and that like lasted something crazy like all the way until 1861, and they only changed it to acts of indecency to make it easier to prosecute gay men. Like it wasn't like a step forward; it was just trying to relax the law. And and when they did try someone on buggery, they had to like prove that anal penetration happened, and they had all these things of like, look how dilated this man's asshole is and how droopy his penis is. Like, and they're just like, oh man, it's too hard to prove this law. We're going to have to do something else. We're going to have to make it a little bit more easy to prosecute. So it's not a great history in that respect.
In Tasmania, weren't they the laggards in this space here in Australia?
Yeah, they were for gay sex. They were. Yeah. But there's so much has gone on recently in the US as well. Remember the guy with the wide stance who was arrested, and I think he was a Republican that was trying to stop. He was anti-gay at the time, and he was arrested because he was hooking up with someone in a toilet. You know, it happens every.
Yeah, there's got to be a better way, right? Like, surely the apps are more discreet than the toilet.
Yeah,
block
it's called
method.
Grinder, and so now people use Grinder to hook up in a bathroom because it's closed.
All right. Now, since we're in the bathroom stall already, can I ask a question, Gerome? Is the glory hole a gay invention?
Good question. I can't say I claim that.
Because in my experience, sometimes a hole in the wall just is a hole in the wall, and
no, it's good.
Well, isn't the whole point you don't know who's on the other side, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's the ultimate Schrodinger's box, because you don't know if there's going to be a box on the other side.
That's right.
Yeah, and the only way to determine is to actually find out.
Usually a quick finger comes through beforehand, Roger, so you know there is a person there.
Is it not a little LED light or something?
No.
You know, a really good one, a name for one would be like the black hole. And it was like always like dark, so you couldn't like actually see. The black hole, that'd be a great name for a bar and a glory hole.
Could be a Dyson beforehand.
Dyson, yeah. No blades, very good thinking. Yeah, with the whole OnlyFans thing, is it, again, I'm assuming if a lot of relationships are open, having subscriptions to OnlyFans is no big thing. Is that right?
No. Yeah, it's no big thing. And in fact, if they're in a relationship, they'll do the whole thing, like record their entire relationship on it every night of the week. If you want to watch, I'm not into that. But if you're on Twitter, they'll show you.
What's the appeal? Is it that they're public figures, or like?
No, it's just porn.
Yeah,
it's just porn.
But
right?
what? But see, like,
free.
isn't it just freely available anyway? Why
it's
do people
free?
pay?
Yeah. I don't know. If you want to have a wank, you use the porn off.
But isn't OnlyFans like? Isn't the premise of that you got to subscribe, right? So this is what I don't understand, right? Because I've seen like there's like Married at First Sight. There's lots of the like it's some for
the
some
market
reason
is saturated. There is so much of it that like when they're new, they'll add the full clips on the Twitter, and then they'll start subscribe to my OnlyFans. But it's too late. Like I've seen everything now. I don't need to look at you.
So Roger, I think what we need to do is start an OnlyFans channel to get our subscriber base up.
Yeah, we have been talking about it. I think that the saturation, like I'm afraid we'd have to meet them at their level, and we're just beginners, so we just have to take it easy.
While we're talking about media, so like the dick pic is something that I know gets sent to girls or women. Is that something?
Maybe go with women.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
sorry for being ageist.
Yeah, I mean, so the dick pic is that a thing, or
that's what you lead with on Grindr.
Biopic.
You lead with the dick. Yeah, no one cares about anything else.
Is it possible, Gerome? Like in the same way that men, you're like a tits guy or an ass guy. Is it like the same? Is there kind of a similar thing in the gay world?
It's really interesting. Some people are all about the dick. Some people are about the ass, but a lot of people are like, don't show me your hole on Grindr, because sometimes you just get that, right? You just get an asshole and you're like, what the fuck? Especially when I'm on the way to work and then this thing pops up on the screen. I'm like, fuck.
Turn off those notifications. There could be children around.
Yeah, totally.
But, you get the old black hole.
Yeah. So, not really a good start for me.
While we're getting in this sort of area, it's hard for me to understand, but there's something for me like a little bit mucky about the asshole. Like I just
you got to clean it, bro.
Like is there anyone?
And it gets cleaned up beforehand. Yeah, most guys, even before you go out, right, you clean up a little bit. You douche. I don't know if you've done that before, but maybe you could try it. Yeah. So if it comes to that, you don't have to worry. Just
not to get it really down and dirty, but have you heard of the concept of the clean snap?
No.
So this is when you're doing your number twos and you make sure you've had enough like fiber and all of that, so that you don't have to wipe.
I do know. Sorry, Andy. Yeah, I do know. Yeah.
Is this
You don't need to worry about that either. So as long as if you're doing that, that's fine, but you still need to douche and just make sure you're a bit cleaned out. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
How you going, Roger? You're okay with that?
Good. Yeah. I think, the dirtiest part of that segment was listening to Andy try to describe the acts like in clinical form. Like I prefer you saying like something more colloquial. Anyway.
Yeah.
or the mucky assholes that he's become accustomed to.
Yeah.
There's a fleshlight for you.
I thought we were in a place where we didn't need to have that anymore.
I used to work with another gay man, and he told me a little bit about. He introduced me to a bygone character of the gay scene in Sydney called Trough-Man, and he was a bit of a kind of hero, right? And so for our listeners, Trough-Man was a bit of a local legend in the Sydney gay community. And basically in the 1980s and 90s, he would essentially frequent gay bars and he'd be dressed in kind of like a latex gimp suit. And he would lie down in the troughs and encourage like other men to piss on him and stuff. It was kind of like a symbol of like the outrageous kind of like sexual freedoms and things of that era. So I want to ask you, Gerome, have you ever seen or know anyone who has seen the magical Trough-Man?
So I've only been to one Mardi Gras, and I've never been to the Mardi Gras party. But that individual was at Mardi Gras parties who my friends have been to and they have seen. And yes, that person does exist.
Oh, he's real.
He is actually real. Yeah. I'm not sure he went to every club, but he certainly did turn up to the Mardi Gras events, and not recently, but yeah, he did in the early days. That's another thing that gay guys are quite into, is just pissing on each other. And I'm not talking about everybody, but it is one of those things that you're going to hear about.
I mean, golden showers is definitely like a kink in the hetero world. Usually like women urinating on men. As made famous by the Sex and the City episode. But no, it's definitely like I don't know anyone who has shared that detail with me. But then again, I think like straight people are less inclined to share details about their intimate life, right? Because
that's true.
Because of the whole monogamy thing, right? Like I don't think it's hard to tell your mate, oh, my wife pissed on me last night, and then have a dinner party the next week and like look her in the eye and like she's pouring apple juice and you try not to laugh. Like there's this whole bunch of awkwardness, right? Like you just
why is that though?
I'm just wondering how that conversation comes up, like in the first instance, like darling, will you take a piss?
It would be so kind if you
It is funny though, because in a gay party, like I've had many friends over, and sometimes that does come up in conversation, like, oh, this guy, he came over and he pissed over me last night, and it's like, wow, okay, thanks for sharing that, but I'm guessing that doesn't happen in your I don't mock them, obviously.
we try not to kink shame here in the middle, and we're pretty deep for most of our listeners. But I think why I bring up Trough-Man and this whole idea, and like say like pissing and all this kind of stuff. Again, I think it goes to this morality thing, right? Like how do you get inside the mind of a man who spends his free time encouraging other men, random strangers, to piss in his mouth? Like it does kind of, it's not something that is hard to process without a level of judgment, right? Because you just don't understand it, and you always fear what you don't understand, right? And I think that's that line is kind of true in that way. It's like just not understanding, because if you don't understand that, then how do you know how they're going to act around you? How can you relax about anything, even though none of this is any of your business? But it does kind of, I think, challenge the mentality around that.
But you don't need to worry, because the guy's in a trough, right? And all he needs you to do is piss on him. So that's all you need to do.
And you've got to piss anyway,
away.
right?
He's having fun, and you need to go. So you do it, and off you pop. You don't have to worry.
Would you do it, Andy?
I'm still scarred from our other episode about urinals, so there's enough.
Oh, man.
Look, I'm not sure what urinals you've been using, but it's not that hard. You're busting. It's a party. You got to go. There's a guy in there. He's enjoying himself. Just piss,
but like,
walk away.
Definitely not a house party, though, right, Gerome? Like, I wouldn't want that in my. Not that I have a trough in my house, but I definitely wouldn't.
You've
want
got a bathtub, don't you?
Oh yeah, good point. I mean, that's definitely the best place for it.
Maybe you could give it a shot. Should we all come over next weekend and maybe?
Again, I mean, I'd be open to dipping the toe, but it would have to be no higher than the ankle.
To get this conversation out of the trough.
Thank you.
I was actually so today we've been talking about gay culture predominantly from a, like two blokes, right? But I want to maybe for a minute talk about lesbians in terms of like its team LGBTQ or whatever, right? But outside of that, how does it fit together, or does it not fit together?
I don't think it does, Andy. I've got a lot of lesbian friends, but they kind of they do their own thing. They're not into the gay parties. So usually a gay party, we have a few drinks. They're not into that. They want to go home, have a few kids, set up a bank account, get a mortgage, and build a house. They're not into the party life, I think, that gay guys are.
All right. Well, we might go into another question. I think that this idea of the power of the pink dollar. It's very common to see, I suppose, very successful kind of corporate gay men out there and in organizations and things like that. And there tends to be this kind of follow through in terms of affluence from, potentially not having the expensive kids and other things like that. And I'd just like to get your take, Gerome, on how you see that playing out in terms of spending habits and how it impacts kind of financial decisions in the gay community.
Yeah, well, I think spot on. I also came from corporate environment, and of course, I don't have I have the ability to focus on just work. Really, you don't go out that often. You do go out, but you don't have the kids to look after. You don't have to worry about the picket fence, so you can focus on just doing your job and earning as much as you can. And at the same time, I guess there is a focus in the community about looking quite wealthy, being wealthy. So you do have to try to attain a different level to, I guess, what a lot of other people would think is normal.
What's the flip side? Like, if you don't give off that impression that you are of means, how are you perceived? And is there a different? Because what I'm thinking of is in the heterosexual world, you've got corporate types, lawyers, and people earning, finance people, whatever, earning lots of money that kind of have appeal because they're dominant in that landscape. But then at the same time, like, a lot of women are really attracted to like tradespeople, right? Rough and tumble sort of. Yeah. So like, I guess how does that play out in the gay world?
Yeah. Gays are really judgy though. So if you're a tradie, you need to be fucking successful at it. You need to have a decent house. And I suspect a little bit more judgy than the heterosexual female would be. You need to have decent clothes. You need to be able to go out. And my experience is, you had to have the really cool, hot inner city apartment. And they're fucking expensive. So you had to have that role to be able to pay for it.
Yeah, I think it comes down to that, having a bit of an arms race, right? Because, you have, like you said, the ability to focus on your career a bit more, less distractions, and then less expenses, like in terms of family. So you have more disposable income. Why not buy that, that expensive shirt, the car, everything. And then all of a sudden, your peers and your, kind of dating market is all elevated into looking good, wearing good stuff, taste for more, the finer things in life. So I think it's a bit of that arms race, right? Like, that goes along with it.
Got to keep up.
The dressing well thing I really relate to, right? And I kind of think that that's like Andy said before, a very clear indication in some way, someone who really takes pride in how they look and what they wear and stuff like that. And I think that it's a criticism of straight men sometimes by women that not enough effort is put in, and too little effort is put into the way you look. And it's kind of, once you're in a relationship, you just kind of let it go, and not in a good way, not in a liberating way.
But I think that comes back to your point, Gerome, around judginess, right? Because if women are less judgy, then yeah, of course, like, why would you keep going to the gym if you didn't really want to? Or why would you continue to, have like expensive clothes if the only reason you did it in the first place because you wanted to attract a partner, right? So once that pressure's off, it's free going. Plus, I guess there are probably the other aspects, that whole monogamy piece too, right?
I completely agree with that, Andy. Yeah. So I feel like before you've decided to partner, that female might be just as judgy as any gay guy, but after a year or two of being together, they're like, we just need to save some money to look after the kids that we're going to have. And I don't give a fuck what you look like.
Can't afford to.
I'm not attracted to you now anyway, so you just fucking do it.
Right. Whereas the gay guys are like, we're not having kids, and if you start looking like shit, I'm going to get a new one. So see you later, bro.
Yeah, that's funny. I mean, it translates to all different aspects, right? Like you said, the hot shit in a city apartment, the clothes, the designer clothes, the cars, like it's kind of like a mindset, really, isn't it? Like, don't be povo, like, have a bit of,
totally
kind of life is about Epicureanism, right? Like, enjoying the finer things in life, and that's how you get the most out of it.
So, Gerome, I want to change course a little bit here and talk about the topic of coming out. And I guess, this is something that heterosexual people don't have to go through. They presume the default almost and don't have to do anything to flag, to their friends, family, whatever. One of the things that I've heard before of this concept of like coming out, like you don't just come out once, you have to come out multiple times in your life to new groups of people that you know, whether it's colleagues but yeah, I guess I'm interested to hear your take, either reflecting on either your own experiences or experiences of people you know, because, yeah, I mean, I guess in the popular culture, it is presented as this traumatic thing for some people.
Yeah, I don't even think, Andy, it's needed to come out today. Whereas before, I think it was kind of, you needed to come out so that people could understand the reasons why you wouldn't want to do certain things with them. I think about my experience. So I moved to Sydney in 1997, 98, a long time ago. And at that point, I wasn't even sure what being gay was. So it took me a while to sort out. I was working when I moved, and it took me a while to sort that out. But when I did, I didn't come out straight away. I just continued to be as what I thought was normal. And then 2 years later, I did come out, and that was a big thing. Like a lot of people are like, well, how'd you just decide this right now? You know, you told us you were this person, and now you're telling us you're someone else. And that was a big thing for them. Probably, look, I don't think it was as big for them as it was for me, but it certainly, they made it that way. But as I think about the different workplaces I've been through, that's changed over time. Like my current workplace, I don't even need to worry about that. Don't need to worry about it anymore, which I think is a great thing. And I think for young people growing up, they don't need to worry about that shit anymore. It's okay.
Well, one thing, just in the context of like a workplace, one thing I've noticed now is, you know, just the increasing prevalence of just the default of using the term partner, right? So like, you know, if there's someone you don't know anything about their personal circumstances, their life, what they're up to, and I mean, like almost like I rarely see someone just assume now like that your husband or your wife or your, you know, it's this very generic term partner, which can cover any manner of possibilities, whether they're married, not married, male, female, whatever. But in some ways that has the effect of almost kind of taking away the color and the flavor of people's personal lives. It's almost like, don't go anything more further than just the really neutral terminology.
Yeah, it depends on who it is, though, doesn't it? I mean, so if it's my line manager, I'm pretty open and honest, and I don't say partner. I say names, so it's quite clear to them if it's male or female. And with my close colleagues, I'll use names as well. I don't think I need to. I certainly don't need to be screaming it from the hills that I'm a homo or I have a partner. Yeah, I just do my job, and that's all I need to do.
I'll probably move us now to this idea of, I mentioned that I have a few friends who are kind of from an older generation in terms of the gay culture, and I find that sometimes when they speak about it, as you would in any kind of intergenerational playback, they kind of have a bit of a bee in their bonnet about the gay culture and the gay community kind of losing its authenticity, its kind of subculture status that was their own. It was their own thing. It was distinctive. It was slightly underground, to now it being just too assimilated or too co-opted. Do you have any thoughts, Gerome, on how that plays out and in your mind or your take on it?
Well, my thought is that probably needs to be that way. I think we do need to assimilate. I think that we need to be accepted as normal people, and that's the way it should be. I've noticed over time that gay bars have started to close down, and I think that's because gay people don't need to go to a gay bar anymore. And it's not just the apps. A lot of people will go, oh, that's because you're meeting on the apps. No, it's because we feel more accepted in normal bars. And that's a great thing. And I thank them for what older people have done. But yeah, I feel like we're at a place we don't need to be different anymore.
I think what's been great about this conversation tonight is that, like, I guess for that assimilation piece or that being accepted piece, there's still quite a bridge of understanding between like I've learned a lot tonight, put it that way, and so having a conversation like this to understand more, I think is, I mean, because like, let's face it, like the last, or pretty much forever really, like a lot of these topics have been taboo, and like it's actually really refreshing to be able to have such a frank conversation. It's like an episode of that ABC show, you can't ask that, right? I mean, and look, I don't know if any of our listeners sort of would be in the same boat as me, but it's been great to just to.
Yeah, it's soon going to turn into an episode of You Can't Say That when we get to air. But anyway, I totally agree. And Gerome, you know how grateful we are to come on, and hope we're striking the right balance of curiosity and respect.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation.
Thank you, gents. I'll let you guys go. Take care.
Cheers.
Thanks, Gerome. Andy, that was a crazy conversation, and finding your groove in something like that is a real challenge.